That's a flex.
All right, welcome back to the House Committee on Gov.Ops and Military Affairs. We are here to hear floor amendment presentations for H429, our miscellaneous elections bill, and Representative Gregoire has an amendment for us. So thanks for being here today. Tell us about your amendment.
All right. I assume everybody's seen it. Yes. So it's very simple. It takes out the 10% plus one, and there's multiple reasons for that. And so as the chair and I spoke about, in my own case, I'll just this is probably something that everybody runs into. So in our primaries, religiously, one party votes more than the other. So you might have to, if I want to get the D nomination, it might be 1,000 people to vote in their primary. So I'd have to have 100 plus one, right? But if a Democrat wanted to get a Republican one in my district, you'd have to get the 50 because maybe 200 Republicans vote. It's not really equitable. So you do have cases where people maliciously go after, I believe it's maliciously go after the other nomination, meaning that they don't go after R's to write in a D, or they don't go after D's to write in a D. But they have a subversive thing where they, in a case of a statewide officer goes and gets progressives to vote in a Republican primary. That stuff happens, but very rare. But the other part is, at least from my town clerks, and I think a lot of people I talk to, their town clerks have a very similar feeling about how onerous a lot of the additional burdens are in the elections these days. I'm constantly being asked by my town clerks not to make anything more complicated and to please reduce their burden, not increase it. And the 10% plus one may sound like an easy bit of math. First of all, the plus one is the part that's kind of confusing. But even the 10%, that's one more thing that these individuals who are elected officials at our state, our towns, have to do that they shouldn't have to do. I'm actually fine with the rest of the stuff as far as having to have the same number of write-ins as you had to have for a petition. I don't think that's that big of a deal. But it's the 10%. I just really have a problem with 10%. And based on what I've heard from my town clerks over the last few years, they don't need any more obstacles to jump over. And we've even heard from this morning of lobbyists for town clerks and stuff that have said, hey, listen, this is one more thing that they shouldn't have to deal with. So that's my my amendment. Pretty simple.
You have questions for Representative Gregoire, even with his caveat that he doesn't take questions? Or Representative Byron.
So your main concern is administrative burden?
What?
Your main concern with this provision is administrative burden on the clerks?
It's one of two concerns. It's one of my two concerns. Yes.
It just sounded like you were speaking to it a little bit more.
No, it's something that comes up. And when I think about it, it is onerous for them. Every little bit that we add, we should be trying to make things more simple at every step, whether it's for voters or for officials, people to run for office. The barriers should be reduced, not increased. If I had my way, we wouldn't have letters on the thing at all. Everybody that knows me for a long time knows I would not have letters on that ballot at all. I think it's horrible, but that's just me. I also think that we should all file the same day. I think it's very inequitable that anybody gets to file after somebody else. We should all be on the same playing field, but that's not what I'm here for today. Wouldn't win anyway. So, but yeah, I have a concern over town clerks and stuff having to do the work, but also it's an unfair advantage in different districts for one party over the other. And it could, in some districts, it's the other way around, but it's not like 500 D's and 500 R's vote in a primary. It could be 1,000 and 200 either way. And that's not equitable. The burden that one party in any district has to jump over compared to the other. And that's not fair.
Any other questions for Representative Gregoire?
Not a question, just that, I support the amendment, looking at it as a compromise. Again, I spoke earlier and, debate and discussion about this as far as my concerns around that 10%. So I can certainly support this.
Minor. Go ahead, sorry. No, your committee, sorry.
I don't think it'll be a surprise to the committee that this provision is probably, for me as a representative from my constituents, given what happened in Franklin County, protecting the 10% provision is the most important piece for me to bring home, based on what happened in our last primary, probably in this whole bill. Hard to choose my favorites, but I do want to acknowledge that this will be a change, but there's, as we heard from Vermont Municipal Clerks and Treasurers Association representative, there isn't an additional administrative, there's not a function that they'll have to do differently. It's just that the number that the candidate has to reach in number of votes. It's not a different counting mechanism or anything like that that would have to be done in order to have a new threshold. Yeah, I do not support this amendment, but I appreciate the desire to have simplicity for clerks. We took up a bunch of measures to try to make things easier for clerks and also eliminate the burden. But I think this one's really important so that you don't get into a situation where the threshold is so low that the will of those primary voters is sort of washed out by a very small number of votes by percentage. So other thoughts on this amendment? Questions? Representative Cooper?
This strikes section 9 and then replaces it with what exactly?
It only takes out the 10%. It's the only thing it does.
So
Everything else stays the same.
leave it, so bring it back to today's rule.
No, because today you have, like for us, we'd have to get 25 write-ins and the bill has 50, right?
Oh, true.
So I didn't change that. Only the 10%. The only part that's the only part that I changed.
Okay.
And I also think, I mean, if I might, I understand where people might come from as far as our particular race in our county, which is a problem. But that's a matter of an individual ethics of an individual that we have a problem with, not necessarily a problem with the election itself or the process itself. That's a one-off that's very frustrating for all of us, but it's a one-off, not the process that's a problem. That's a personal ethics problem. So, but anyway,
I agree that there is a huge personal ethics problem. I also think that we can provide a little bit more protection against that happening again in the future with this provision. So we'll have to agree to disagree on that one. I think Representative Gregoire.
that would not be surprising, but you know what's good is that we can disagree and smile and still be the best looking guys in the room. Sorry, Mike. You could be.
I just had a comment about that, you keep referring, Mr. Chair, to the Franklin County race. We're not talking about tiny numbers in that race that this individual won. They were not insignificant numbers that he won by. So we're not talking about 50 votes or 25 votes. So I don't see how putting a limit on votes, a threshold on votes is really going to help a situation like that. I think as Rep. Gregoire said, it's a personal ethics issue that we're all having a problem with.
So to answer that question, Representative Hango, there were almost 5,000 Democratic ballots cast countywide, and there were 237 write-ins. So less than 5%. And I agree that there are different opinions on this, but I'd like to raise that threshold.
I don't have anything to
Representative
answer.
Hooper?
Is it me or is there some irony here? Because you're talking about like if there are 1,000 Democratic voters in your primary and then 200 Republicans, it would behoove the minority in these scenarios to have this rule be inequitable, as you said.
Because pretend you and I are running against each other in my particular district, and this plays out a lot all over the place. If you look at the Secretary of State's website, like us nerds do on election night when we can't sleep and look at the results for everybody, it plays out pretty well. But if you were running as a Democrat and I'm running as a Republican, well, pretend I wasn't running. Pretend you're running as a D.
Okay.
For you to get the Republican primary would be with write-ins would be 50. Right, because we have 200 and the minimum here is 50. Or 10% would have been
Right, right.
20, but 50 is
Understand
higher.
that.
But if I was running and you weren't running, I would have to get 100 plus one for the same, that doesn't benefit the minority. That benefits the person who has the higher turnout in their primary. To keep the other side out.
In this scenario, what is the objective of the person who's claiming victimhood?
Well, I don't think there's victimhood. It's just not equitable. I don't think you have to be a victim to be inequitable. My barrier to get the D nomination is way higher than somebody in my district to
I
get.
know, but you would be running as a Republican, right? So why would you be seeking the D as it is?
Why not?
Why not? Because you're a Republican.
So
Well, first of all,
I want to just break it back down because we also have a couple other amendments
Yes.
here. And we've strayed far from the
Yes.
amendment now. So are there any other questions or concerns about the amendment before we take a position on it?
A motion?
I'd be happy to take a motion.
So I'd like to move it in the positive, so make a motion, we approve of Representative Gregoire's amendment.
So to be clear, a yes vote would find it favorable, a no vote would find it unfavorable.
Yes.
Any other discussion? I'll give you $1. Clerk will call the roll.
Representative Byron.
no.
Representative Gordon. No. Representative Mingo.
Yes.
Representative Morgan.
Yes.
Representative Cooper Burlington. Representative Markey.
No.
Representative Chase.
No.
Representative Waters Evans.
No.
Representative Cooper Randolph.
No.
Representative Nugent.
No.
Representative Higley.
Yes.
Representative McCarthy.
No.
We. 8-1.
Representative Gregoire, thank you for being with us this morning.
This
Appreciate
was
it.
a tight one.
Good to see you, Representative.
And I'd like to invite Representative Sibilia to come and present her two amendments.
Good morning. Is that the bell for the floor?
Yes.
Are they holding the floor for us?
I texted that we will need at least 15 minutes. And so my hope is that they will hold the floor, but I don't know. I haven't heard exactly what they're going to.
Okay, I think we can get through it faster than that, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for the time again this morning. So I have two amendments for you today. And let's see, let's look at the one that starts with redesignation, which redesignates sections within the bill, and then suggests some concepts that could help us improve voter choice, improve voter access and transparency, and ensure that we are placing the voters in charge of our elections process. The first is a redistricting study. This reapportionment process study would explore opportunities to make Vermont's redistricting process less partisan than prior redistricting efforts and yield redistricting plans that better reflect the principle of one person, one vote. In its study, the board would consider the following: redistricting processes in states where the legislature does not participate. In those states, the 2021 and 2022 redistricting results and whether there have been any court challenges, how best to revise Vermont's reapportionment process so that no elected persons or partisans are involved and that incumbency is not considered. In our last reapportionment process, I took exception, and you will see this in my other amendment, to incumbency being considered as part of reapportionment. These are the people's districts. They are not our districts. We are not entitled to them. The parties are not entitled to them. They are the people's districts. My second is a blanket primary study. Blanket primary is a top 4 primary using a common ballot and listing all candidates on the same ballot. The top 4 vote getters, regardless of their partisan affiliations, would advance to the general election. Consequently, it would be possible for 4 candidates belonging to the same political party to win in a top 4 primary and face off in the general election. This is something that works well with ranked choice voting and allows people to elevate the candidates that have the most support forward across all parties. It would allow Republicans to vote for Democrats and independents to vote for for folks from all parties in the primary, which is not what happens now. This blanket primary study would be conducted by the Secretary of State in consultation with the Vermont Municipal Clerks and Treasurers Association, and tell us how we might begin to do this not later than the 2028 election cycle. The third in this amendment is ranked choice voting for presidential primaries. I introduced and I believe have a bill up on your wall here for this. And this, I believe, the date that we put forward in here is for 2024, I believe. I think it's 2024. And so that is my first amendment. It is 2 studies on processes that I believe could help elevate all voters' voices and ensure candidates move forward that have the support of most Vermonters and moving forward with ranked choice voting. Would you like me to go to my second, or would you like to speak to?
I just have one quick question.
Yes.
Is the ranked choice language in the amendment that you brought before us similar to the Senate's ranked choice voting bill that Senate Gov.Ops is currently considering?
It is. I believe they have changed their date to 2028. This is 2024.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to present my second amendment? Okay. My second amendment has 2 instances in it. There's a name change proposed for the sore loser title. I believe that this committee selected the sore loser title, looking at convention from another of other states, and named it according to what they think that it does. I think you heard yesterday that there is disagreement with what this proposal actually does. And so I have proposed a name that reflects what I believe this proposal actually does. And that is, let me make sure that I read it correctly. We would rename this to Vermont's Party Over People General Election Provision. As you heard me say yesterday, I believe that passing this provision imposes the will of a party past the primary into the general election and prohibits additional candidates from reaching the general election, limiting voter choice. The second piece in this amendment would be removing incumbency from consideration in reapportionment, which I spoke to briefly about my study. Again, these are the people's districts, not the incumbent's district or the party's district. And those are the amendments that I have. I appreciate the time that the committee has spent with me, that the chair and the vice chair have spent with me individually. And I would just like to reassure you that there is no 4th reading.
Representative Chase.
For the second one, you're specifying 2-member districts only for, so incumbents would still be prioritized for single-member districts?
It is taking incumbency out of consideration for reapportionment consideration.
I could ask legislative counsel to clarify. This section deals with the items that boards of civil authority should consider and their recommendations about the subdivisions after a 2-member district. A larger general district has been created, if I recall from our reapportionment work. Is that correct?
I believe so. I would have to familiarize myself a bit more with that.
Yeah, it's my recollection that incumbency, the only reference to that being considered is when a board of civil authority is looking at further subdividing a 2-member, multi-member district that suggested in the original proposal. Recall that our reapportionment process, we make an initial proposal, oftentimes that does not internally divide 2-member, multi-member districts. We ask for feedback from the boards of civil authority before making the final proposal. So this whole section of law has a reference to incumbency. It's the only reference to incumbency that I remember from the enforcement process, but it's just about the boards of civil authority, so that it encourages them not to intentionally put two incumbents in the same subdivision after they've considered all of the other. So it's the last thing that they're supposed to consider in their priorities. Representative Higley.
Well, I have concerns about the reapportionment piece. I was asked last year to sign on to a bill. I know we have H20 here now, which is similar. And I have a lot to say on it. I investigated it quite extensively and can't support what's being proposed. But again, it's a time-consuming effort to even look into that piece of it.
Representative Henkel.
Yeah, I don't think I know enough about this, not having been on this committee, to weigh in one way or the other, really. On removing incumbencies from consideration by the Board of Civil Authority.
So I know we're heading to floor. There's a lot here that Representative Sibilia has put forward on these two amendments. I'll make two quick comments, and then if anyone else wants to say anything before we consider these amendments or take a position. On the first piece, on the ranked choice voting especially, you've heard me make reference to the Senate's bill. One of the reasons that I didn't put that in our miscellaneous elections package is because I knew that Senator Hardy was going to take some significant testimony and do work on that bill. I am really committed to giving that a full hearing and taking testimony and learning about it and see if they have solved some of the precinct level summability issues that come up with ranked choice voting. But I know that they're working on it now and that their intention is to send us a bill. So I won't support the amendment, but I do support us having further conversations about how to increase voter choice through ranked choice voting. I have committed to that in the past, and in the discussions here, I've alluded to that several times. So while I won't be supporting the amendment, we will be giving ranked choice voting some time after crossover. On the second amendment, I don't have particular heartburn about removing reference to incumbencies, but I have to say that the reader assistance heading piece, I can't support that. I'll just leave it there. So is there anything else you'd like to tell us, Representative Sibilia, before we take a position on the amendments?
No, I think that's great, and I hear you and appreciate your willingness to have a hearing on ranked choice voting once it comes over.
For being with us, Representative Chase.
For the long one, the 15-page one, I've been trying to read fast. The two studies, one on ranked choice voting and one on changing the primary.
So it's a redistricting study. So which would remove the legislature from the redistricting process. It would have that look at how do we remove them and have an independent redistricting study, which has happened in a number of states, and then a top 4 blanket primary study, looking at how to implement that in 2028, and then implementing ranked choice voting for the presidential primary in 2024.
Tracking. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hands. Thank you, Representative. Appreciate always the conversation. But right now I'm going to make a motion on the first proposal, the 15 pages that we just discussed, referring to redesignation, ranked choice voting, et cetera. I will make a motion that the committee finds it unfavorable.
So since we're saying your motion is to find it not favorable.
I'm sorry, yeah, not favorable. I say unfavorable.
So in that instance, the motion being made in the negative, a yes vote to the motion would be to oppose the amendment. A no vote would be to recommend the amendment. Correct.
It's like verbal math.
Yeah. So a yes vote is the underlying bill, no amendment. Any further discussion? Clerk shall call the roll.
Representative Byron,
Yes.
Representative Boyden, yes. Representative Hango.
Yes.
Representative Morgan,
Yes.
Representative Hooper of Burlington, Representative Markey,
Yes.
Representative Chase,
Yes.
Representative Waters Evans,
Yes.
Representative Hooper of Randolph,
Yes.
Representative Nugent,
Yes.
Representative Higley,
Yes.
Representative McCarthy,
Yes.
11-0-1.
Okay, so, the second proposal of amendment, changing the reader assistance heading and the discussion around districts. I would also like to make a motion that we find this not favorable.
Again, a yes is to support the underlying bill and to reject the amendment. A no would be to support the amendment.
Correct.
Seeing no hands, clerk shall call the roll.
Representative Byram,
Yes.
Representative Boyden, yes. Representative Hingo,
Yes.
Representative Morgan,
Yes.
Representative Cooper of Burlington, Representative Markey,
Yes.
Representative Chase,
Yes.
Representative Waters Evans,
Yes.
Representative Hooper of Randolph,
Yes.
Representative Nugent,
Yes.
Representative Higley,
Yes.
Representative McCarthy,
Yes.
11-0-1.